The show was brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and a whole lot more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BLUESEATS for $20 off your first purchase. That's promo code BLUESEATS only at SeatGeek, the official ticketing partner of From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Let there be live. Next stop on the Rivalry Tour, the Garden State, New Jersey. What's going on, Rangers fans? My name is Jimmy Fanizzi, and this is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast presented by SeatGeek. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use the hashtag BlueSeats to interact with us on any and all topics at hand. Also, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe on all audio platforms, and be sure to rate us 5 stars. It would mean the world to us. That is right. Episode number 3 of the Rivalry Tour is officially underway. This time, we are in the Garden State, also known as New Jersey, where we will be discussing the New Jersey Devils. Obviously, a very disappointing year for them last year, but they've made quite a few improvements this offseason, so all I'm saying is don't sleep on this team this season. This is coming from a Ranger fan, obviously, but thankfully, I am not alone to discuss the Devils today. I brought in a little bit of extra help. I've got Trilly and Tiko from Stick Talk Hockey. Gentlemen, first time ever on the show. It's a pleasure to meet you both. Thank you so much for hopping on. How you guys doing?
Fantastic. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm awesome. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine, fellas. And of course, you knew I had to bring in the big guns. You know him well. He's a mainstay on this network. He hosts Devil State of Mind. He is my best friend and yours, the one and only Neil Villapiano. Neil, long time no speak, my friend. No stranger to the show. How's everything, my friend?
Everything's going well, man. You know, we are now to the middle of August, getting close to the end of August here. And, you know, we're just getting that much closer to training camp kicking off for all of our teams. And I'm excited. I'm really looking forward to this upcoming season. Jacob Markstrom touchdown in New Jersey today. Got a chance to check out the facility. And so it's real now. It's real, and it's exciting. And I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to bringing a lot of great content to Devil's State of Mind, as well as the Hockey Podcast Network, whether that be through podcasting or social media, and certainly live watch-alongs throughout the season. This is going to be an exciting year. And as always, I'm excited to jump on your podcast, Jimmy, and talk a little Devils hockey, which is what I love to do.
Absolutely, my man. A little over a month away from preseason. I cannot believe hockey is almost back. But before we even talk about the Devils, fellas, we did have some breaking news that went down the pipe a few hours ago, as we finally have some news about Patrik Laine, as he has been traded to the Montreal Canadiens for Jordan Harris and a 2026 second-round pick. So this is one of those deals where it kind of makes sense for both sides. You know, I had Jake on from Jake Jackets from the Blue Jackets for the first edition of this tour, and he said he wouldn't have minded if he stayed, but he also said he wouldn't be surprised if he got traded. And lo and behold, Montreal potentially, in my personal opinion at least, gets another power play option to play alongside Cole Caulfield, so that's going to be a dangerous power play, at least better in recent years for Montreal. I don't expect both teams to be that competitive, though, but Patrik Laine does make their secondary offense a lot better. So, Neil, I'm going to start with you here. What did you think about this trade, and who do you think it makes the most sense for?
Well, it's great that, you know, we finally have some clarity as to, you know, where Patrik Laine would, you know, continue his career, because I think that when he first requested to be traded, and you look at his contract situation and everything in between, you knew it was going to be tough for a lot of teams to really jump in here and make a move. And, look, Patrik Laine is one of my favorite players in the league, and I won't lie to you to say that I wished that the Devils had been able to make a move for him prior to some of the other moves that they made earlier this offseason. But, you're not always going to get the guys that you truly want, right?
Right.
And I think for Montreal, they see Patrik Laine as an opportunity, as a low risk, high reward. Yes, they didn't take any salary retention, which is fine. They had the cap space to make it work, to get it done. For them to also get a second round pick, I think is good business by Jeff Hughes. I'm looking forward to Patrik Laine getting a fresh start. And granted, it's going to be tough playing in a big market like Montreal, but for him playing on a young Canadiens team, I think it gives him a really good opportunity to refine his game. He's coming off of being on the NHL PAs. I forgot the name off the top of my head. Their
Player assistance program.
Player assistance program. Thank you. And I think overall, what you're getting out of Patrik Laine, and what I'm sure many Habs fans are hoping for, is you're getting a guy that can score 40 plus goals a year. He's still very young, with a lot of experience both in the regular season, and he's played a bunch in the playoffs as well. And for Columbus, I think for Don Waddell and everybody involved, it's kind of a, would have been nice to get maybe more in return than just a player, sure, but at the same time, you didn't really have a lot of leverage. And Don Waddell is going to want to bring in his guys. He's going to want to have cap space. I think now the interesting thing for Columbus is this. Do you keep Elvis Merzlikins and maybe make him a backup, or do you look for some other trade? I would argue to say this. Don't be surprised if Don Waddell in the next maybe couple of days, maybe week, starts to look for a starting netminder, whether that be somebody maybe like a John Gibson. I think that would be a really interesting trade partner between two teams that are young and rebuilding. And I think it's good for the Columbus Blue Jackets locker room. Not saying that Patrik Laine was causing an issue, but I think it's just good to have him out and have him onto a new team before training camp gets underway. And you don't want to have that, awkwardness where a guy is wanting out and wanting a fresh start and he still hasn't been traded yet. I think some people were speculating whether or not he was going to end up being on the team to start the year and maybe traded later in the year when the cap wasn't as bad. But I think overall, I think it was good business by both teams. Honestly, I don't think this is one of those situations where one team was, completely, is favored in this deal. I think for Montreal, they get a guy that can fit into their top six with this young core and really thrive and bring a lot more offense to that team. A team that desperately needs more goal scoring for sure. And for Columbus, they just open up salary cap space to make other moves to continue to build that team to hopefully in the future become, I don't want to say relevant again, but certainly become competitive down the road for sure. So overall, some pretty good business from both teams without a question.
I couldn't agree with you more, Neil. Trilly, I'm going to go to you next. What did you think about the trade?
I think it made a lot of sense for both sides. Honestly, it was well timed for them to move on Laine. I think the Jackets, they have too much aging asset on a young team where they're clearly still trying to rebuild. This is a piece that's going to expire or become useless by the time that you're actually making a push and need his relevancy. So you should move that, make some assets ASAP. And I think for the Habs, it just makes sense. They have the cap space, so they don't need to spend anything for retention. And it's a risky player, but they're a team that can afford to take the risk. I really didn't want the Devils to move on Laine because I just don't know what his commitment level's at. We don't know what he's going through right now with the players' assistance program. A lot of that's kept tight and in closed doors. He's had issues in other locker rooms. He's had issues getting the point. The only time he's ever actually been any good defensively was when he had, Torts yelling at him? Was it
I think
Torts
so,
yelling?
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he had Torts hollering at him the entire season. Like, that was the only time he had any sort of, defensive upside. So unless the guy's going to be potting you 40 and you're guaranteed on it, I don't know if you're going to want to sacrifice that cap space, especially in a place like the Devils where you have to go through all these re-signs in the next 2 years. I mean, we got Mercer on a UFA coming up, or an RFA, excuse me. So you got to plan for that. He's either going to have a great season this year or he's going to have a bad one. And you have to account for both sides. We don't know, though.
Yeah.
And more than anything, it's fantastic for the Habs because they're going to have a player to make a great example either with or of. And it's going to be great for that example in the locker room because you're either going to see a guy coming back with a fire in his step to show these young guys how to really take control of your life and really apply these work habits, or you're going to see a guy who phones it in and, pays the consequences for it. And these kids are going to see it firsthand. They're going to watch the fall off happen in real time and go, wow, okay, that whatever I do, not that.
Yeah, no, you make valid points. Tiko, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered most of it right there. I don't see any problem with it for either side. It was always going to be difficult on Columbus's end to make this happen with that massive cap hit, and obviously they didn't want to retain any money as well. So to get off of the deal when it was clearly not working there, and then I mean, in turn, it's going to be interesting to see now what Columbus does with that cap space for this season because they need a lot out there. So I like it.
Yes, they do. That's putting it lightly, Tiko. Just saying.
Yeah, they need a lot. So you open that up for a couple of years. That's really nice to see. And then on Montreal's end, it's the same thing, right? They get they get a guy that if it works, it's fantastic, and if it's not, I mean, you're not squeezed for the money right now, anyways. So you have some time to look at this player, and it's a bit of a reclamation project in a sense, right? Because I mean, as much as we all know the talent that Patrik Laine has, it's been a rough go over the last few years, and obviously some stuff we don't know about and all that. But this is a bit show and prove. I'm concerned about. I mean, we now have two teams that he's kind of wanted out of, and he's back up to Canada, back up to the cold, to the big market. I'm going to be intrigued to see how it plays out over the next couple of years, but I still really like the move from Montreal.
It's a fair point that all of you make, and I couldn't agree. None of what you're saying is wrong. I'm just curious to see how it works out for Montreal side, especially because I know that they have a bit of a closer edge as far as competitiveness is concerned, as far as Columbus. But, their offense definitely got a lot better as secondary offense and on the power play as well. I can say that much. But we'll see how it goes. And, of course, we wish all the best to Patrik Laine. But with that being said, gentlemen, let's get to the main topic at hand here. And that is one of our biggest rivals, the Devils. Obviously, very disappointing year in all seriousness. I don't mean to troll. I know I love to troll Devil fans a lot, but I'm not going to do that here. Finishing 7th in the Metro, 38, 39, and 5, 81 points. Under 500 winning percentage. Neil, as much as I love to make jokes at the Devils' expense, in all seriousness, just describe the overall feeling of the disappointment that the team felt and how the fans felt. I know injuries were a big factor. The goaltending was a huge question mark all season. But even still, you got to look. I always say it starts at the top with Fitzgerald and those guys, but at what point do we start blaming the players for not doing their job? Again, I know injuries happen, but just describe the overall feeling of what the hell happened last year.
Well, I think you kind of nailed it on the head, honestly. I think the word disappointment is probably the best word I could use to describe last year. When you look at the expectations coming off of the year prior, with how much of a massive step the team took and how much, they had a historical year. They obviously beat the Rangers in the first round. And yeah, they got knocked out by a much better.
No need to remind me. I'm just kidding.
Well, I have to.
Go ahead.
Regardless of anything, I have to remind you. And then they got knocked out by a better Carolina Hurricanes team. And you felt like the Devils, it was now their next. You felt like the next step was now they're going to make a deep run into the playoffs. And yes, injuries did play a factor. And I don't think people realize how much of an impact losing Dougie Hamilton when the Devils did was going to play. Not just on the Devils defensively, but offensively. He's their top power play guy. He is a guy that really can help set up a lot of other guys to score. And so losing him was big. You lost Jack Hughes for a period of time. You lost several other guys for big periods of time. And, I sound like a broken record, but it's true. The goaltending was an absolute mess. Vitek Vanacek imploded. Akira Schmid, who's not even on the Devils anymore after being traded this offseason to the Vegas Golden Knights, just regressed a lot. And so the Devils were put into a position where they really just could never recover. There weren't enough moves to make that was going to save this Devils team this year. Even firing Lindy Ruff was not going to save this team. And they fired Lindy Ruff too late in the year. And that's mainly because Tom Fitzgerald had too much of a personal relationship with Lindy Ruff, and he didn't want to let him go. He even spoke about it was an emotional decision to let him go. And so the Devils end the year very disappointed. A lot of people looking at them and calling them overrated, saying that the season before was a fluke, that this team is not mentally tough. They're not physically tough. That was a big thing that a lot of people talked about throughout the year, is that the Devils could not and would not stand up for themselves physically. And if you don't believe me, go to the last game between the Devils and Rangers in the regular season last year. Yep. I think, quite frankly, that just kind of shows you right there what the Devils were lacking. And so you go into this offseason for Tom Fitzgerald. A lot of Devils fans wanted him fired. I didn't understand it because I looked at it as everything that everything that could have gone right 2 years ago went right. Everything that could have gone wrong last year went wrong. Simple as that. There was no in between in any of that. So I know that Tom Fitzgerald is a good general manager. I think he's one of the best in the NHL. And you look at his track record, you look at the way he's built this team, he's done a tremendous job for the most part. But he is suffering through the same issues that several other executives have dealt with through the last decade plus since Marty Brodeur retired. And that is the Devils have not had true good goaltending. But now he brings in Jake Allen he's got him for this full year. He gets Jacob Markstrom. He gets the big fish that he wanted. He's got him for 2 years. They seem to have some really, really good young prospects in the goaltending farm with Nico Dawes and Isaac Poulter and Jakub Malik, guys like that long term. And then you look at this team overall, and it's clear to me that the Devils were willing to sacrifice some speed and some skill to be more gritty. And so they get guys like Brett Pesce, who grew up a Rangers fan. Just going to mention that real quick. Did play his youth hockey in New Jersey. Should mention that.
Yes, he did.
But he signed a long-term deal in New Jersey. You bring in Brendan Dillon. You bring in two of the best defensemen in the entire free agency. And I think it goes to show you where the interest for a lot of players to go to New Jersey comes from, with the fact that the Devils were nearly able to acquire Steven Stamkos and or Jonathan Marchessault as well for the top six. They didn't get either one, obviously, but at the same time, I think that goes to show you how much of an attractive place New Jersey has become. You bring back Tomas Tatar, a fan favorite, and also somebody that did really well on a line with Nico Hischier and Dawson Mercer 2 years ago in that historical season in 22-23. You bring in some other, pieces. You bring in, Paul Cotter, who is still a young guy, but is a very physical player who can bring some offense as well. I mean, truth be told, the Devils have become a much more balanced team when you look at them on paper. A team that can beat you in a multitude of different ways. That is the identity here. And you bring in a new head coach in Sheldon Keefe, and, it's going to be really interesting. He has a chip on his shoulder. I think the best thing for the Devils is the fact that they had the season that they did last year, and now everybody in that organization has a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. And it's really exciting to me because you're going to have a team that is pissed off, that wants to prove everybody wrong, and wants to make that next major step towards winning a Stanley Cup. And I'm not saying the Devils are a Stanley Cup contender this year, but this is a team that if everything goes right, if everything clicks together, this team can make a deep run in the playoffs. They are prepared for it, and they are battle-tested, and they are hungry. They are very hungry to perform, and I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what they can do. You have guys like Luke Hughes and Simone Nemec who are now going into their second full year in the NHL. Dougie Hamilton's coming back. I'm hoping that Siegenthaler can bounce back after last year. You got Pesce, you got Dillon as well. And they brought in Kovacevic via trade from Montreal, and that's a really good trade because
that's a sneaky X-Factor trade right there.
It is, and it shows that the Devils want to get bigger, they want to get stronger, and they don't want to be intimidated. And you also, you have guys, you bring back Stefan Nason, a fan favorite for a lot of people who actually became way better after he moved on from New Jersey. And that's exciting in its own right. I mean, there's a lot of different things here that can make you excited about this team going into the year. And so for me, it's now about, we got to see what this team's all about in about a month. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what they can bring on a night-to-night basis. And, I can't really complain about the job that Tom Fitzgerald did this offseason. He continues to do a tremendous job. And now it's about Sheldon Keefe and the boys proving it on the ice here in about a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Trilly, you are the Devil fan out of the duo of you here. So I'm going to go to you here on this next question before I throw it to Tiko here. Jacob Markstrom obviously was the big fish that the Devils landed in the offseason because they needed goaltending desperately. And I was actually talking to a couple of Devil fans off the air, and even a Ranger fan who said Jacob Markstrom tends to have a bit of a track record. In other words, one can argue and say 1 year he looks fantastic, another year he looks bad. Last year we saw the good Jacob Markstrom with Calgary. What do you expect from Jacob Markstrom? Do you think we'll see the good Markstrom again? Or do you think his trajectory will continue and you think he's going to have an off year? What do you think?
Jacob Markstrom is a really interesting goalie, and he's a goalie in a lot of the same ways that, I hate to say it as a Devils fan, but Brodeur would be. He's a product of a good system when he's really good, and when he's really bad, it's because the team in front of him is, pretty damn bad,
Yeah.
And there's no two ways about it. Anytime that the team is mediocre and they need him to drag them to the playoffs, it doesn't happen. And anytime the team is above average, he's there for them. So it's a little bit of one and the other coming together. I actually have some pretty high hopes for Markstrom with that. I was gritting my teeth a little bit when the Devils first went goalie shopping because that wasn't the true issue. Sure, you can blame it on the new kid on the block and the guy who's, played one complete season in the NHL. But I don't really think that's where you look first. You look at the fact that you have Dougie Hamilton injured. That was your main bet. That was the guy who was supposed to take the reins and show Nemec and show Hughes how to move on a day-to-day basis. They lost that immediately, and these rookies were playing minutes way over their head in situations way over their head against guys that are way over their head. These are not like Makar-like superstars right out of the draft, we would want them to be. Sure, they're very, very good players, but they're not the X factor game breaker yet. Luke Hughes has some moments, definitely, but he has more bonehead plays than he has good ones. I could put together an unhighlight reel that is twice as long as this highlight reel from last season on missed assignments, overcommitting, stick in the wrong lane. It goes on.
Turning over the puck in your own zone on the
power
play.
I was gonna go there next.
Exactly. There's just so many things that were so much worse than the goaltending even was. Sure, we all love to complain and blame the goalie because it's easy. But what we really need to do was look at the coaching system was terrible. The defensive system was awful. No one knew their assignment half the time. When someone was trailing down from the point on a pinch, everyone got confused and got thrown into a blender. It looked terrible. Even the guys who have incredible defensive orientation looked awful. I would trust Nico Hischier with my life in the defensive end, and he still looked foolish sometimes. It's one of those things where eventually you kind of have to look upstairs. Sure, we could put more blame on the players, but until we give them the tools and the system to thrive in, it's not going to work. And just hand-fisting these guys into a situation and going, well, do better, It's not a solution at the end of the day. And with everything that you mentioned that they brought in and what Neil mentioned they brought in, I feel like this is a lot of the rehash of the Devils that I liked. And we all had that, we all hear of the love story. That's the one that got away. And I feel like that was me with Stefan Noesen for the longest time. I watched him in Carolina and just went, damn, man, come on. Why? Why didn't we just bite that one, And I still feel the same way about Coleman to a degree, Miles Wood less so, but That's the kind of player that I felt like we lost there, and I'm happy to have him back. You see Thomas Tatar coming back. The Devils had the
Yes.
second most efficient 5-on-5 line with Tatar, Mercer, and Heischer all put together. So you look at that, and there's a lot of good things coming down this pipeline in front of Markstrom. And as long as he gets his supplemental scoring, to bring it back to the original question, I think that they'll be fine because they have Brett Pesce, they have Siegenthaler who's looking for a bounce back, they have Hamilton at full health and ready to go already and practicing. I think that it's going to be nothing but good things. And like Neil said earlier, you would have to have a slew of bad things happen again for this to turn into the season we saw last year.
That's fair. Tiko, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm more of a Canucks fan, so I'm very familiar with Jacob Markstrom's game, and
I'm sure from all those matchups with Calgary, you can definitely have some stories about him.
yeah. I think it should be a good thing at the end of the day, but don't be shocked if it takes a little bit for him to really get going, right?
Right.
Goalies going over to new environments. I mean, even though it's nice that it's not a mid-season move, you get training camp, you get to kind of learn how everything works over there, but it still could take a little bit before he really gets in his bag, especially with, you mentioned he goes up and down season per season. It does really depend on the defensive environment. You've got to hope that it's much better this year. It should be, like, by all accounts, it really just should be. We went over all the pieces that came in, Dougie Hamilton, all of that. But overall, I mean, they really needed an upgrade from last year. I still have hope for Schmid, and out in Vegas, he's going to get a chance there, but it clearly didn't work last year. So it's a great move for them.
Do you know the beautiful thing about being a sports fan? There's only 2 days the whole year without a game. 2! With so much happening and so much action, that makes just about every day game day at DraftKings Sportsbook. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. It really couldn't be any easier, any simpler. I am seeing, though, that you can bet the Florida Panthers to repeat as Stanley Cup champions at plus 900 for the 24-25 season, but that's just what I would bet on. What you would bet on is up to you. And if you want to know how simple it is, if you just place your first bet and bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Well, how do you do that? Just download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use our code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in West Virginia, visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Blue Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. See terms and responsible gaming resources at sportsbook.draftkings.com/hockey terms. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Question: what are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day, or it could be something simple like drinking more water. Our schedules are packed nowadays, and it's a huge priority to take care of ourselves. Mental health is so important, and therapy is something you should never skip to make sure that your mental health is in check. It can help you set boundaries, develop positive coping skills, and become the best version of yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's completely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time for no extra cost. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp, because your mental health matters. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/THPN. Yeah, no, I agree. It's certainly a lot better than what they had last year. I mean, look, when Jake Allen came in, at first, he actually looked decent. And, you kind of saw the wheels fall off toward the end of the season. So going out and getting a guy like Markstrom, yes, he's up there in age a little bit, but you know what? He's still 1,000 times better than what you have right now. Go ahead, Neil.
Can I just say that just last year, 8 of the top 10 goaltenders in expected saves and also high danger chances and also wins were 30 plus years or older. So I
Yes,
get that a lot of
exactly.
people feel uncomfortable when your starting netminder might be 33, 34, 35 years of age. But the reality is that 3/4 of the goaltenders, 3/4 of the starting netminders in the NHL are well above the age of 30. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky is well above the age of 30, and he just finally won a Stanley Cup. I mean,
Yep.
so it's not. I just want to say to Devils fans that, yeah, I get it. It's a risk. But you know what? Every move you make is a risk. There is no surefire guaranteed move that you make that's going to work out completely. So it was a calculated risk last year with the Devils going back to Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmid, and it didn't work out. Now you're going into this year with another big risk of 2 older goaltenders in Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom. But the reward could be that both of them come out and perform very, very well. Jake Allen has proven to be a very solid backup. And yeah, he did have a handful of games this year with New Jersey where he was very, very good and kept the Devils competing for a playoff spot until the very last week of the season. And then
Yeah.
Jacob Markstrom, like you said, he's hot and he's cold. And yeah, I think it will take him some time to get used to playing with the team that's going to be in front of him and the overall system. But I think overall he's going to get into his bag and he's going to have a lot of really good performances and give the Devils a chance to win a lot more than they lose. And so I get it. It's a risk, but as the legendary head football coach of the Arizona Cardinals, Bruce Arians, once said, "No risk it, no biscuit. If you don't try great shots, you won't take one." So that's
Yes.
kind of the way I look at it. You got to take these risks if you want to win and you want to win a Stanley Cup. And the Devils, they took a lot of risks this season, and now they got to hopefully come out and get some rewards for it.
Go ahead, Trilly.
I wanted to just leapfrog on this and add on a stat that my boy Tiko over here made a fantastic point of doing some research on earlier this season. And that is that goalies that play over 60 games don't go far. They don't win you cups. Your goalie needs to
That's
start.
a fair point. It's a fair point.
Like we dug deep on it. He did some research and couldn't find one. Not many. And you had to go deep into the reserves. What
Yeah,
was
but now
it, like 15
hold on.
years ago,
Let me
Tiko?
cut you off for a second. I apologize. Don't you think that a factor to that, though, is that some teams rely too much on their goalie and not enough on their offense to get them some support?
The Rangers.
Exactly my point. Thank you, Neil. Exactly.
I do think that, but I think that more than that, goalies just don't respect the idea of having a real backup yet. And I think that as time progresses and as like the game evolves, as we always see it, we're going to be falling much more into a 1A, 1B system, much like the Knights had going, or much like Boston had going. And that's probably going to be the holy grail of goaltending for a while, is just having a duo that you can lean on for a 50-30 split. I think that the really beautiful thing here with Markstrom and Allen is they're both a little old, but they both have a lot of experience with that. And with both of them having a ton of experience, both being at the top of their game, you can actually balance that lion's share and not feel exposed on any given night. If the road trip takes longer, if there's an extra travel day that gets thrown in due to weather, you don't feel like you have to throw Markstrom in against your rivals across the pond. You can lean on Allen for that day and not risk the injury, the strain, the pulls, all the stuff that resurfaces on games 83 to 87, where it's the first round and you're going, this looks bad. What do we have now? If he's really hurt, then what do we have? Like, you're looking at a Vancouver Demko situation. No offense, Tiko, but
She loves was there
Way to take
first.
shots at your own co-host there. Okay.
Yeah, I'll take it.
And she loves though.
happens.
You know, he showed.
He was there
Loves.
for us.
She loves. I think
was
long
there
term
first.
could be very good for Vancouver.
No,
for
in,
sure.
in all seriousness, yeah, definitely. But actually, Tiko, I'm going to throw it to you here on this next question. I know you're not the Devil fan here, but just knowing how big of a Devil fan Trilly is, you know how closely he watches this team. I know how closely Neil watches this team. What are your expectations for the Devils this season? Where do you think they'll finish in the Metro?
So, first of all, I may not be like a diehard Devils fan, but I got a lot of love for the Devils over there. We got the Hughes connection. I mean, Markstrom got his first starting job in Vancouver. Now he's out there.
Fair enough.
I'm very excited to watch this team this year. It really should be a big bounce back season. I'm expecting a bounce back season. I'm not 100% confident in Sheldon Keefe, as I'm not the biggest Sheldon Keefe guy per se, but I'm willing to give him a chance. I'm willing to give this team a chance. They bring in a bunch of people that they needed, a bunch of pieces that they needed, and sophomore seasons for some of the big guys on the back end. I'm really expecting them to take a big jump in the standings list next year. I don't think that it's going to be, 4 or 5 more points than they finished with this year. I'm expecting them to hold on to a playoff spot the majority of the season.
So do you think they'll be holding on for a wild card spot, or do you expect them to compete for the division?
I would wager that they're going to be competing for the division. I won't be surprised if they find themselves in a wild card spot. I won't be surprised at all. I mean, it's going to be a tough division all year, but I won't be shocked at all to see them up at the top of it.
And by the way, if you want to wager on that, go to DraftKings, use code THPN to sign up. Good transition there. But anyway, Trilly, what are your expectations for the Devils this season?
$100 in the bank account for Jimmy.
Go ahead, Trilly. I'm sorry.
Honestly, my expectations are probably around the low 90s, like high 80s as far as points are concerned. I think it'll be a very good season. I don't think it'll be the best in the league and probably not the best in the Metro itself. Probably battling for like a solid spot or out of wild card 1 if I'm being super realistic. We still have 2 really young defensemen. We're not sure what steps they're going to be taking. But we can hope they're big ones now that the big guns are back and they'll be back in training camp for another season in a new defensive system. Lord, I hope. If Keefe runs like a parallel to what we had going on, I'm going to absolutely jump off a bridge. There's no way.
There's no way.
Oh, boy.
I can't watch that anymore. The rough system was rough. And I'm beyond that. Like, I have really high hopes. I think that Markstrom will post a really solid season. I think he'll have an above 900 for sure. Probably might push for Vezina with the advanced scoring and defense that he has in front of him. I think the biggest question mark is going to be what they've done to replace, and this is going to be like such a sore spot on the Devils. I know this is supposed to be a rivalry podcast, but I'm burying us myself. Michael McLeod. We got to talk about it.
Oh, boy.
Let's talk about it. Because you know what?
Who's that?
Who's that?
I don't know who that is.
A current draft pick from the London Police.
Oh, God.
Never heard of him in my life.
I think he was taken like 3rd overall selection, 1st round London Police, 2019 class. Sound about right? Anyways, like that, regardless of what he did, what that situation is, that is a good 3rd line center that you up and miss. And let's be real here and call it what it is. I don't really see Eric Howla as the center I want or need. I see Eric Howla as a very, very good winger, and that's where he should be playing. And I think that shoving Howla to the center position and then building around that leaves a lot unchecked, especially when you get into that 3rd and 4th line that can suddenly become exposed when you have Nathan Bastian on your right wing. I mean, I'm sorry, but he's been around for years now, and I still have no taste for the guy. Like I feel like I'm eating cardboard every time I watch him play. It's disappointing at best. Like I feel like he's our new Severson. Like he's just going to be our trash boy until we send him out for a 6th. And aside from that, I think that the Devils will be very good, but it will really depend how they're able to either fill that third C and get some extra depth moving forward in the midseason, or how Keefe is able to protect those guys and make them less exposable. But there's still just such a big question mark there.
So now let me ask you both this before I throw it to Neil here. Since Trilly, you have the Devils fighting for a wild card spot, who do you and Tiko expect to win the Metro this season? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but
I plead the fifth.
Oh,
yeah.
Plead the fifth.
I'd pick the Rangers. Okay, I'll
Really?
say it on your show.
Wow. Wait, just
Rangers,
because you're on my show.
The Rangers are a beautiful regular season team, and I expect
that's
them.
The truth.
I expect them to do very well in the regular season yet again. That's all I'll say.
I mean, listen, I tend to agree with you. I mean, that's why I don't have them winning the division. Spoiler alert, I'll give my official season prediction in the coming weeks, but I'll say that right now. I don't have them winning the Metro.
Or some nonsense like that. I'm gonna
Quince.
I'm gonna scream.
Just saying. But Trilly, what do you think? Who do you think wins the division?
I have New York. Like, I have the Rangers.
Oh,
I'm not gonna lie. Like, they got a wagon, and like, okay, like, here's the thing about New York, because like I can't give you like a spoonful of sugar without giving you a spoonful of medicine. The Rangers are just like the most like fraudulent team I've ever seen on the ice. It's a team that hides behind their goalies so flagrantly, it's insulting.
Thank you.
I'm so sick of watching New York just add all of these massive tough guys and being like, it's the solution to everything. Let's bring back hockey.
No, it isn't.
Let's make our team slower and more incompetent. And
seriously, finally, a Devils fan who shares my pain. Thank you.
And it's frustrating on a couple. I was listening to your last episode and how you were actually talking about the extensions. And
for Igor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
For Shasty. And I can't help but share the sentiment where it's like, yeah, you know, if he signs long term, it might be another Lundqvist situation.
Thank you.
Because there hasn't been any hard medicine to come with it, you know? And New York is one of those teams where they're like blessed, absolutely blessed with just being in New York. Everyone wants to go there. Why not? You know, it's the big city, bright lights. No one cares who you are. You play hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many more important people there. You are left alone. It's like the biggest market you could be in without being hounded. It's perfect. So they just get so many great assets and players without even having to try. Like, I will never tout a New York general manager as being incredibly talented or on the top of his game or like a perennial, like, defining source of where hockey's going, because they don't have to try. And like the stroke of genius and IQ that we always are like, oh wow, who would have thought they could pull that off? It's like they didn't have to. It pulled itself off for them.
They didn't have to. You're 100% right.
Already shipped to New York before that contract was signed. Like Kane already was like figuring out what cab driver he wanted to punch before he even signed that contract. Like, let's be real here. You guys got so many damn yellow cabs over there. That was like a free range.
Yes. Listen, man. Listen, I mean, I still think they're going to be a good team. They're going to be a playoff team, but it's hard to argue with what you're saying. It really is hard to argue. But anyway, Neil, I'm going to throw it to you to wrap things up here on the show. Your expectations for the Devils, and if you want to respond to what Trilly said, the floor is yours.
Let me do my best Skip Bayless impression.
Oh, no.
Okay. So with my expectations for the Devils, this is a Devils team that I expect to get back into the playoffs. I also expect them to be a team that could make a deep run into the playoffs. And by deep, you know, you can however you want to describe it as a deep playoff run is the way that I would probably describe it, most likely. I think the Devils will be competing for the division. I don't think they end up winning the Metro. I do think they end up finishing in second behind the Rangers as well. That's my thinking. But I look at it and I say to myself that Carolina is on the downward swing. Pittsburgh, I don't know. Washington, I don't have any belief in. The Islanders, I mean, if the Islanders can just get a bit of offense, then yes, they're going to be fine. But other than that, I don't think so. Then you have the Flyers who, surprised everybody last year, but still ended up missing the playoffs anyway. And then, of course, you have Columbus. So while the Metro Division is tough, without question, I do think the Devils are at the top, or one of the top tier teams in the Metro Division. And I think they will be competing for a top 3 spot. And I think that's where they're going to end up. Whether it's first, second, or third, it doesn't matter. I think that that's where they ultimately end up at season's end. I'm going to say low 90s to mid 90s in terms of points. 93, 94, 95 points. I don't think it'll be anything historic like we saw 2 years ago. And again, I would tell Devils fans, this is not going to be a super flashy team. Yes, we do have a lot of flashy offense, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be as flashy as what we've grown accustomed to seeing. We're going to see a team that might grind out a lot more games, that maybe just play much more of a physical game, but it's still going to have a lot of offense. It's still a lot of excitement regardless, because look at the amount of talent that the Devils have, especially on the top 6. And you look at the defensive core staying healthy, it's a very, very talented defensive core. And the goaltending, same thing. If everything's working clear, the goaltending is going to be great. And look, I get where Tiko's coming from with Sheldon Keefe. I will be also, I'll tell you right now, I am not the biggest fan of Sheldon Keefe. Okay? I'm not. I'm going to say that right now. I'm not excited about his track record, especially what he did in the playoffs. But I will say this. A lot of times in the NHL, when a coach gets fired from his first job and immediately gets another job, 9 times out of 10, he bounces back and does a lot better because he learned from a lot of the mistakes. I don't think you can make an argument to say that this isn't the most talented team that Sheldon Keefe has ever coached. And everybody says, well, you had Mitch Marner, you had Austin Matthews, you had William Nylander. Here's the thing. The Leafs never had a decent bottom 6. They've never had a defensive core anywhere near the talent that the Devils have, and they damn sure have never had the goaltending that the Devils have right now on paper. So clearly right then and there, the Devils this Devils team is the best team that Sheldon Keefe has ever been a part of. And he keeps the coaching staff relatively the same, except bringing in Jeremy Colleton, which is fine.
Right.
I like Jeremy Colleton. I still think he can become a head coach in this league. Needs more time to learn. Keeping Dave Rogalski as the goalie coach, not a fan of it. Not a fan, but at the same time, we'll see what happens. I think keeping a little bit of familiarity with the team, with the coaching staff, I think is good because I think Sheldon Keefe needs to learn about the players on this team, the personalities, and go from there. There's guys that certainly are going to play with a chip on their shoulder, and it's every single guy on this roster. I said some, but it's truly that every single player on this team, even the new guys, come in with a chip on their shoulder. You have some championship experience with guys like Andre Palat, who, by the way, is about to have his second child. So congratulations.
Oh, yeah.
His family.
That's awesome.
Just thought I'd mention that. You have guys like Paul Collider. The hilarious thing about Paul Collider is that the dude is like not even 25, and he already has more championship experience than 3/4 of this Devils team because he won a Stanley Cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. And he also led the team in hits last year with like 200 plus. No Devils player got anywhere close to 200 hits last year. Brendan Dillon, if you look at the combination of hits between Brendan Dillon and Paul Collider, that's over 500 hits from just last year. And you obviously have Curtis McDermott, who is going to do nothing but fight and take stupid penalties. He's basically going to be this year's Brendan Smith. Simply put.
Yeah.
This is just what it's going to be. And that's fine. I have no issue if we have one guy that does that.
Yeah.
Not a problem. McDermott's not going to play every game. I'll tell Devils fans right now, he's not going to play every game because we have other guys who could actually contribute on the ice who could also be physical, like Stefan Nason, Brendan Dillon, Paul Collider, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even putting in Kovacevic as a seventh defenseman is actually better than having Curtis McDermott on the ice. But I digress. I have nothing against Curtis McDermott, by the way. It's just that we know why he's here. It's like, why is Matt Rempe on the Rangers? We already know why. It's literally one reason only. The man can't do anything except stand there like a stick and fight people. So there you go.
And get into fights almost every game and rack up more penalty minutes than probably everybody on the team.
Yeah, so what? If he scores like more than 5 goals this season, I'll be shocked.
Yes, same. Yeah. Honestly, same.
And if any of you actually think of putting him on your fantasy team, you're an idiot. You might actually have brain damage.
Yeah, literally. The only reason you'd want him on your fantasy team is if you want, God forbid, any points he puts up defensively.
For the memes. The answer is for the memes.
For the memes, yeah, exactly.
You don't do it for any other reason other than for the memes.
Right. Anyway, please continue.
Going back to the Devils, I mean, look, Tom Fitzgerald, he's a guy that has taken risks. He has made a lot of great moves over his time building this team. And now he's done the work. Now it's Sheldon Keefe and the Devils organization, the players and coaches. Now it's their turn. Now it's their turn to come in with a lot of excitement, but also a lot of focus that this team needs to turn it around. This team needs to take that next step, get back in the playoffs and make a run at it. And so that's the way that I look at it. So yeah, I think the Devils are going to be fine. I think there's going to be periods where they're going to be good. I think there's periods where they're going to be bad. Honestly, because the NHL season is a marathon, not a sprint. They say it's all 82 games. No, it's a marathon. It truly is. And also, remember guys, we have the Four Nations Cup as well for like 10 days.
Yes.
Like in the middle of the season. Who knows how much that might affect every team, including the Devils. It's going to be really interesting. Devils also go overseas and play in Czechia for 2 games. And it should also mention, and I don't know if anybody has mentioned this, the Devils have the fewest travel miles of any team in the National Hockey League. They will travel the least in terms of miles of any team in the league. And that might play a very, very positive factor on this team, especially when we were talking about, as yours truly was talking about, the whole, how do you balance out the 2 goaltenders in Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen?
Right.
That's the way that I look at it. So bottom line for me is this. My expectations are this is a playoff team, get in the playoffs, and let's make a run.
I agree with you, Neil. I'm not sleeping on the Devils this season. As much as that pains me to say as a Ranger fan, I'm not sleeping on them this year. I definitely think they will be in that top 3 dogfight for the division with the Rangers. And I'm not sleeping on Carolina either. I know they lost a lot of pieces, but you still have Shmestakov, you still have Jordan Staal, you still have Aho. So I'm not sleeping on Carolina either, despite the fact that their goaltending is still a huge question mark. I still think they're going to be up there. But the Devils, for me, are definitely going to have a much better season than last year. I definitely expect them to be in the playoffs. If not for the division title, they will definitely be a wild card team. But I definitely expect them to be at least in the top 3 for the Metro. Go ahead, Trilly.
What's your take on Matt Rempe? I gotta ask.
You want my take on Matt Rempe?
Yeah, are you buying into?
Oh boy, okay.
All
right, so let's I guess this is what we're wrapping up on here. Okay, so look, I like him, I do, but I know he's been training with Chris Kreider for some reason. I don't know why. I guess for some offensive training, but I don't know what the hell he's training with him for. But I really don't have any high expectations for him. He's a nice physical piece to have, but if you're just going to put him out there every game just to get into fights, what's the point? Like really, what are we talking about here? Look, I get it. You want to be a more physical team. You want to generate more bodies to the net. You want to get more checks in. I 100% get that aspect. But if I'm going to bring in a guy whose sole purpose is to just be, look, you need an agitator on this team. The last good enforcer that I can remember vividly off the top of my head was Brandon Prust. That's it. Tanner Glass wasn't any good. He wasn't that good, Neil. Let's be honest with ourselves. But even still, Matt Rempe, I like him a lot, but my expectations for him this year are about the same. It's going to be his first full season, so we'll see where it goes, but they're still the same. I expect him to still wrap up. What's that?
And he's a marked man now.
Yeah, yes, everybody's going to go after him, absolutely. But I still expect them to rack up more penalty minutes this year, if not more than last year. That's just my take.
Can I also just say that I think the Rangers theme song this year, especially if Matt Rempe plays, should be "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" by Drowning Pool.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
honestly that would be that should be like Matt Rempe's goal song. They should have his own goal song.
That would be amazing.
Like 2 goals that he'll score all year, and one of them being an empty netter.
Yeah, we'll go off twice. Yeah.
So for all the puck bunnies and hockey wives that might be listening that have no clue what we just said, Matt Rempe, are you gonna love it or are you gonna list it?
Wow.
Good point.
It's a fair question, but I think for me, until I see a little bit of improvement in penalty minutes, I'm listing him. Sorry.
Bit. So instead of 500 penalty minutes, if Jimmy sees 495, then it's an improvement. That's what I'm hearing.
Y'all are unreal. But gentlemen, this was such a pleasure. I really cannot thank you all enough for coming back on the show. But before we go, Trilly and Tiko, how can people find out more about your show and where can they find you on social media?
You can find us pretty much everywhere at Stick Talk Hockey. That's on Instagram, that's on Twitter, that's on Facebook, on YouTube, we're Stick Talk Hockey as well. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much any major podcaster out there. You can find us on there. And yeah.
Neil, where can they find out about Devil's State of Mind if for some odd reason they aren't already, which they should at this point? You've been on this network for a long time, but how can people find out more about your show and on social media?
So as always, you can check out the Devil's State of Mind podcast wherever you get it, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever. Just search Devil's State of Mind. You could check us out on YouTube. We have video formats of every podcast episode. Just, again, search Devil's State of Mind podcast and you'll find it. I'm only 29 subscribers away from 100, so please, if you guys haven't already, please give me a subscribe. Would really, really appreciate that a ton. You can follow me on Twitter at Devil's State, Instagram at Devil's State of Mind, and you can also check us out on Facebook as well. And you can also check out the articles that I post monthly for Pucks and Pitchforks over on Fansided, which covers the aforementioned New Jersey Devils. But yeah, that's where you can check out everything that is to do with myself and the Devil's State of Mind podcast.
I will leave links to both shows in the description section on YouTube and all audio platforms. Gentlemen, this was such a pleasure. Neil, always good to chat with you, my friend. I can't wait to do it all again in the regular season. Maybe do a few watch-alongs for the Rangers and Devils. But thank you so much, Neil. Always a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine, my friend. Thank you so much, as always, for having me on.
Anytime, man. And Trilly and Tiko, pleasure to meet you both. You're welcome back anytime. I can't wait to do it again with you both real soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the spot to talk about the Devils on a Blue Seat show.
Anytime, fellas. Go subscribe to these fine gentlemen here again. Both shows have links down below in the description. That is going to do it for us on From the Blue Seats. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you smash that like button on YouTube and subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified of every single episode. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment letting us know your thoughts on the 24-25 Devils season. And also let us know on all social media, Twitter and Instagram at BlueSeats94 and use hashtag BlueSeats. And one more reminder, we are sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is your number one source for the best deals on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, and more. Go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app and use promo code BlueSeats, all one word, BlueSeats, for $20 off your first purchase. From the boys in Stick Talk Hockey and from Neil of Devil's State of Mind, my name is Jimmy. This is From the Blue Seats, a New York Rangers podcast. Next time on the Rivalry Tour, we will travel to Boston to cover the Bruins. Go Blue Shirts, and we'll catch you next time. Peace!